Good morning. So I'm here in one of the practice rooms to do my little, intro video for day 3 of the Rochester camp. And so far I've already had my group lesson. We did a little bit, just a little tiny bit of chamber music altogether, which I'm to understand is a little unusual for the basic track because usually there's a lot more review that happens before something like a tiny bit of chamber music being introduced. But it was cool. It was fun. It was hard, but it pushed our limits, and I liked that. The other thing that I've done this morning is a short video with my teacher, Sandra. So have a look at that, and then I'll wrap up the rest of the day. Maybe have some other interviews. I'm going to try and walk around and talk to people and get other opinions so you can hear and see other stuff that happens here at SCOR. And so here's Sandra. Hello, so I'm here with my teacher, Sandra, and I just thought that you guys would enjoy hearing a little bit about what she has to say. Could you introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. My name is Sandra Halloran. I'm a cello teacher here in Rochester, New York. And I've been teaching at SCOR for, I think, 12 years now, a long time. And SCOR has come a long way in all these years. It now travels all over the country and has many different tracks, along with the basic track, which I have been the instructor for many years also, basically since the beginning, I think about 6 or 7 years ago. So basic track is really awesome. It's for anyone who's just starting out on their instruments. Anyone who's been teaching, or I'm not teaching, playing for, less than 2 or 3 years. And maybe if you're familiar with the Suzuki method, somewhere in Suzuki book 1, 2, or 3 would probably be appropriate for basic. Also, if you have never played in an orchestra, basic is great for you also. So I hope you all consider coming to SCOR, even if you're just a beginner, because there's room for everyone here at SCOR, and we really like working with adults of all different levels.
So one more little question, because you've told us some entertaining stories about the things that happen in the basic track, and I know a lot of people are really anxious about whether or not they have enough skill to come to SCOR, and I've heard, like, well, you mentioned the first day there was somebody who'd come and they'd only been playing for like 3 months.
Yes.
And it struck me like that's really okay. Like it's not a big deal.
No.
So I thought maybe people would like to know, like, what are some other things that you've encountered that some people might think, oh, I can't go to SCOR if I'm like that.
Well, we've had people come to SCOR before who don't read music.
Wow.
And that is challenging, actually. It's actually good to have a little bit of background in reading music, at least maybe know the names of the notes on the staff and how basic rhythms work. Because if you don't read music, it's really hard to play an orchestra because they're not going to teach you the music by ear. You actually have to be able to read it. So that's one thing. Even if you only can play a D scale, or you can only play a basic scale, open string scales, it would be helpful to at least know how to read basic notes, and nothing crazy, just very basic, like half notes and whole notes and quarter notes. But those are things that you might want to know how to do, and you can actually learn all of that on the internet. So that it's not like you have to have a teacher when you come to SCOR. We've had people come who have just been playing on their own. They've learned off the internet. Okay, fine. Come and learn and come and have lessons. And, we'll teach you, we'll correct and tweak your posture. And you don't need to have formal training to come, because you don't really have formal training, right?
No, I'm almost completely self-taught. So.
Yeah, and are you having fun?
Oh, yeah.
And you feel like you're learning and getting better?
Definitely.
Totally. So you don't need to have formal training to come here. You have to have some experience on your instrument, and we're kind of going to tweak you over the course of 4 days and help you to improve your posture and really just get a fine-tuned eye on your playing so that you can go home and even just continue learning. You might decide, oh, wait a second here, I might need some lessons. Or you might decide, okay, I've got enough to go home and work for another 6 months. and then maybe go to a SCOR somewhere else in the country and get another tweaking.
And I know like the SCOR classes usually fill up like a month or two ahead of the event, which, I mean, that would be enough time for somebody to learn how to read music if they haven't learned it yet, but would like to sign up for SCOR.
Absolutely. So if you decide at the last minute, hey, I want to go to SCOR, and you have a month is plenty of time. Get yourself a theory book. You know, start learning the names of the notes. Go online, musictheory.net. Musictheory.net. They have a note reading exercise. It's really great. You can totally learn how to do it there.
Well, thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Thanks for coming to SCOR.
I'm glad to be here.
It's been a pleasure to work with you.
So I'm in the sanctuary now. It's in the afternoon. We just had our ensemble practice, and they're going to be setting up for a master class on playing chamber music. And then if we don't want to attend that, we're invited to go to a class about eclectic styles of playing the violin. I think I'm going to be going to that one. But, boy, I'm wiped out. My brain is just absolutely fried. I think this is the first time I'm going to have to resort to like a 5-hour energy or something in order to keep going. But, although the classes are optional, it's not like it's mediocre optional. This is all stuff that I really wish I could do. Anyway, so here you can at least see the space that we're practicing in. It's quite large, very beautiful. There is a pipe organ in the back. That's what's been happening this afternoon, and I'll update more with some additional thoughts about the program after I've taken these classes. So I'm back in my hotel room, and I'm wiped. Been a really good day. So day 3 is wrapping up, and I want to hit on a couple of items that have occurred to me throughout the day. So first off, right now it's probably about 4 o'clock, and sessions run until 5:15 when we have dinner. I'm already back in the hotel room. I'm just so beat today. You know, we've been working so hard, and I love every second of it, but I also need some rest. And since a lot of the schedule is optional, we have this flexibility where if I need to come back to the hotel room and rest for a little bit, that's okay. So what I decided to do is I pushed myself a little bit. I had one of my 5-hour energy drinks, and I took that extra class that I just mentioned, and then I'm gonna rest, and I'm gonna spend the rest of the evening rehearsing in the ballroom here at the hotel, practicing for the music sharing event that we have on Saturday. So I really like how the schedule is flexible like that. You know, they have these offerings, and there's always 2 or 3 classes that you can choose from. Although they do strongly guide you towards certain things. So like the cellos have a class that they're very strongly, you know, encouraged to take. Another thing that I wanted to touch on is, you know, I've been talking a lot about how SCOR has been so welcoming to people who are inexperienced or are just beginning to learn. But one of the things that is apparent is just how welcoming they are of people who have more skill than that. You know, they have the basic, the intermediate level, and then what they term the performance level. So from the website, you know, they make it pretty clear that they accept all skill levels. But you know, I'm seeing people here at SCOR who have been playing for 20 or 30 years. You know, my afternoon class had a lady who was in a professional orchestra, and you know, she's gotten older, she's retired from the orchestra, but she comes to SCOR in order to keep playing. So there's there's younger people, there's older people, and that's really cool. Somebody asked if there was any critiques that I had of SCOR. Not really. I mean, the only critique that I could think of was more critique of the facility, which is that the church we're in, they have air conditioning, but it doesn't work great. You know, the building is probably like 74 or 75 degrees, just warm enough for it to be noticeable, but not so warm that we're sweating while we're playing. The only time when I was actually uncomfortable is when it was 95 degrees outside and the air conditioning inside just couldn't keep up. That was the only time it was actually uncomfortable. So, you know, maybe be prepared for having to like take care of if you're sweating while playing, you know, have a rag that you can put over your violin or whatever. But it's not like the place is not air conditioned, which specifically was a worry that I had. I was really concerned that we would be getting into some facility with no air conditioning at all. And so I had planned for the worst, hoped for the best. And, you know, it's okay. It's really okay. Some other points that I'll mention is they have Wi-Fi in the church that we are allowed to access. So that's nice. You know, it's not very fast Wi-Fi, but I can get Wi-Fi throughout the day, which is especially good because cellular reception in the church is not that great. And that itself is probably a good thing because nobody needs their cell phones going off in the middle of a class or whatever. I noticed there's a lot of flexibility in the way that the teachers are running their classes. You know, if they feel like the students are more advanced, they'll start teaching more advanced stuff. It's not like there's a playbook that they have to stick to and there's no flexibility. No, it's very flexible. And that's been an interesting thing for me because in the basic track, as you heard Sandra talking about earlier, they get people who can't even read music. But this time around, we had a lot of people who are a little more along in learning their instruments, so we were able to do some slightly more advanced stuff than the basic track might usually do. And I really like that the teachers have the flexibility to do that. So that's just another good point about SCOR that I noticed. I've talked so much about the food, and a thing that I realized earlier today is when I go to a lot of events, I have to bring with me like protein bars in order to keep me topped up throughout the day. I haven't had a single one of my protein bars all week long. That really surprised me. I'm used to going through one or two of them a day. But SCOR Camp really fills you up. And holy cow, the desserts that they have. And it's not just for dinner. Like, you associate dessert with dinner, but the dessert for lunch today was a double chocolate fudge cake thing with strawberries on top. Hey, food's important, right? That's why I'm sharing it. So I just came back from the class, and I'll mention a little bit about the class. And this was the eclectic music class. A lot of people will think eclectic music. So like I was anticipating it being like Turkish fiddle, klezmer, maybe some Indian music, or I don't know, just stuff that we don't normally hear about. What we really got was like a history lesson about American music and where it came from. So we talked a lot about bluegrass, jazz, bebop. We even touched on stuff like ska, but always with a focus on string instruments, you know, how big band affected the way that violins were played and how bebop developed as a response to that and how the playing developed. There was a little bit of application. You know, he did hand out some music, and that was a fun thing about all of the classes that I've attended, all of the optional classes, invariably they have some music that they hand out. So that's cool. I'm adding to my collection, and it's not necessarily stuff that I would seek out because I'm always going on the internet and getting sheet music. But this is stuff that, I would never have thought to print out some of this sheet music on my own. But here somebody's handing it to me and explaining a little bit about it, and it gets my curiosity going and it gets my interest going. So now maybe I'll play some of this music that otherwise I wouldn't have. And that's always a good thing. Another thing that's been happening a lot with SCOR Camp is I'm getting a lot of news and a lot of resources that I didn't know about before. I mean, the internet has a lot of this stuff, like Strings Magazine. You've probably heard about Strings Magazine, or at least their website. But, I'm learning about even more things. And I'm learning about things like the American String Teachers Association is having a convention in Pittsburgh, which, I'm from Pittsburgh. I had no idea that this convention was happening in Pittsburgh in March. So in 9 months, they're going to have this convention. I had no idea. And so it's nice to come to an event like this, and people are always mentioning things like this. I mention casually, yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh. Somebody asks me, and they say, oh, there's a convention happening in Pittsburgh in 9 months. It's the sort of information sharing that you get at any sort of convention or workshops or anything like that. So tomorrow is going to be our last day. I'm going to be spending probably a lot of this evening rehearsing and practicing for that. Maybe a little bit of jamming too, because we don't have anything else happening this evening. But overall, day 3 has been a really great experience. Just working really hard because we're more than halfway done, right? So there's a lot of reviewing material, a lot of adding material at the last minute, trying to get things a little bit more polished so that the lessons we're learning are set for us to take home and continue working with. All right, I'm going to get some rest now. And that's it for day 3.